Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking, Debbie Buyaki. Welcome aboard. Today we'll be taking a flight over Nature's View as usual, kicking off from Nairobi, making a stop at moving forward and maybe finally landing in Turkana County. I hope you enjoy this climate journey story. Seatbelts on and wheels up. Now, as we come to the third research topic on matters freshwater conservation and community issues, having known the facts and benefits of groundwater, explored groundwater a bit, maybe in Africa, enlisting, then taking a deep dive into Kenya, my country, then seeing the novelty of its location and how it is quite the solution that would be needed for the place it is located. All the data and all the statistics. This is we've been talking about a lot of things. And if you're joining us from here, I would actually need you to go and listen to the other episodes so you could understand what I'm talking about. And by the way, what causes the saltiness of the water in Turkana is volcanism. It's a whole explanation. The East Africa Rift is what informs Lake Turkana, and it's a whole thing with the tectonic plates that shift. So it's a whole rift, and the rift is what has volcanism, and this volcanism, of course, is salt and many other minerals, and that's what causes impurity or the saltiness, salinization of the water there. I think that's something I hadn't explained in the previous episode, but I hope you understand it now. Now that we have all this data for me, with all these explanations and research and novelty and everything we've discovered, is it in this research now it's coming to a conclusion on what to do and what next, now that I have all this information with me? Is this research to be part of those that are nodded upon and clapped at during forums and presentation? Is it the ones that are published and put in shelves to gather dust? Is it those that people just are in awe of and it ends at that? So is it also just going to be statistical knowledge, or is it going to be of impact and value to the people it matters the most? So I beg to disagree that this research should just be those that are nodded upon or clapped at and put away for, a different type of day when someone wants to make reference to this research. This information and data could and should be used to change the lives, most of the people relevant to it, the people in that area and the countries that neighbor it, because they also do face almost the same issues when it comes to droughts and famine and all the related atrocities. I think it also needs to be something that's novel in Africa. We saw in the statistics yesterday that only 3% of groundwater is actually utilized in the farming system and the irrigation and agricultural systems in Africa. And we have so much water going on here, but drought is something we still complain about, and we have our solution. Actually, in Niger is also something really big. Maybe I should also do a whole research about it. There's a whole ocean under Niger. So why isn't Africa tapping into this? And is this research also supposed to be the outdoor and the voice and even action, really, to show that this is possible and not from humanitarian aiders or other foreign governments, but from within ourselves and by ourselves? So by this, ladies and gentlemen, I decided by all means and help, of course, I will try and get these waters extracted for use by the communities there and benefit of the people there, if not for the ripple effect of being multiplied and utilized in other countries as well. Besides, honestly, for what reason was I pursuing this knowledge if not in the first place to help the greatest stakeholders with it? There's a whole story behind this, and I will not preempt it for sure before episode 7 because it's been coming for a few years now. Anyway, so I thought about this plan I have, crazy as it sounds, then thought about it for a day and two, and then a week and a few weeks, and I decided, let me talk to Dr. Elaine because he's the one who discovered the waters and he has sunk a borehole there before. So why not ask him for guidance and what to do? Yeah, made total sense. So since I was on the ground, like in Kenya, and not him, I decided to look into a few details and see what would be a suitable place if I were to pursue this and go ahead with it. And this is more of a story I'm telling because it's at the moment, this episode is in the past. I'm telling you, like, it was in the past. So it's more of a story and a narration. Turkana County, turns out, it has 6 constituencies. Turkana Central, Turkana North, Turkana East, Turkana South, Turkana West, and the outlier, Loima constituency. And as per my readings and research on Loima constituency, I found out again that it is the most affected by the drought and famine. This also being in regards to the past 3 years. I think I've mentioned this multiple times. Past 3 years has been a difficult time for Kenya and northeastern Kenya, and more so the Horn of Africa in regards to drought. So out of the 6 constituencies, Loima constituency is the one that has been affected the most by the drought and famine over this period. And in terms of numbers, it is also leading in population size, with an estimate of around 120,000 people, going above 120,000 people. And that's as per the Kenya Cradle of 2021. So it's a bit recent, if not too recent, because, we know we lost lives, I think, during this 3-year period. So the estimate is around 120,000, give or take, above or below. Another reason I opted for settling on Loima constituency is that its positioning on the map. It is almost located adjacently to Turkana River. And if you can remember from the previous episode, Turkana River is one of the feeders of the aquifer, the Lotikipi aquifer. So the aquifer runs under Loima constituency, and that's below. And above, we have one of the feeders of the aquifer. So it's such a suitable position for everything in terms of numbers, location, and the need that's associated with the people there, the communities there. So I reached out to Dr. Elaine, explained to him what I wanted and what I was planning to do moving forward. And the knowledge and the data I had attained and presented to him, of course, the case of Loima constituency it was more of a chat, and I think for him, he prefers to listen more. So I explained and thought, for sure, if he were to gun this down, I would just be like, well. But so he listened to the idea, and after explaining everything and how it made sense, we should move in on Loima constituency. He was up for it and encouraged the idea fully. He, for sure, maybe also has been looking for people who would pursue this aquifer, considering its novelty, its resource, its replenishability, sustainability, and everything. I think he also just has a liking for the aquifer because he has been here on numerous counts to get more data, get more science, and use more algorithms to discover more of the aquifer. So it's something that for sure he did encourage. So I think that's exactly why I say he's quite more or less like a key pillar in my research, not only borrowing from his work as a secondary source, but in terms of just the willfulness to pursue this again and again for him, and for the first time for me, who's completely had no background in water exploration and stuff like that. Recently, actually, I have been talking to people who are in the water fields, and I think I had no idea about water. In my country, there's a different zone called Turkana River County, and it's also another interesting spot where water happens to be a problem in terms of its scarcity and too much of it. So there's one period where it's too much and it's flooding, and then there's one period there's no water at all, and that affects agriculture. I think it's also a thing with, I like to say that drought sometimes is in 2 phases in terms of its effects and similarities in the ideas. So when there's flooding, we can't still do agriculture or have like a means of livelihood. And that's the same effect we also have when there's famine. So in Kenya, during this past 3 years, we had horrible drought and no water. Across the border in Uganda, they're also facing a different type of drought. They were having floods and mudslides. So we were on the same slate when it comes to water insecurity, food insecurity, political disturbances, all being caused by the same effect, but different sides of the pendulum. It swings both sides. And that's the interesting side of climate change. We all, at the end of the day, end up just having almost the same effects, but from different circumstances. Anyways, that's just the detour. You can imagine for sure if Dr. Lane was to shoot down this idea, and this is still in regard for me being grateful for his support during my research. If he were to shoot down this idea, I think it would be more difficult to pursue it. I was not going to give up for sure. I don't think I was going to give up. This you'd understand after I tell you the background story to all of this. But I think it'd have been more difficult to pursue it without his expertise, considering he is the one who owns the algorithms and it's a whole technology. I don't know if I explained it. It's called Wachex, where it peels the layers of the earth like an onion, and then you get to see what's below it. Maybe if I don't know if it's in this episode or the next, that I will show you visually what it looks like, and I will attach my story map. That's something I published with the National Geographic and the Nature Conservancy. A story map that explains this whole project, but it has now visual representations, so now you can understand more fully what I'm talking about in regards to the aquifer. Anyways, thank you, Dr. Elaine. So now we got into it. We decided, we're pursuing this, and we started looking at coordinates of Loima constituency from satellite images and aerial shots. We had latitude and stuff like that. He's a geophysicist. He's the one great with the geography. So Loima constituency, if you want to check it out as well in the deeper version, except Googling it, it lies on the latitude 2.8702 degrees north and the longitude 34.9507 degrees east of Kenya, in case you just want to pinpoint the locations in more specificity for your knowledge or for your action purposes. So we then proceeded to look at maps in 3D and infrareds and 1D. This was so cool for me to actually see how the Earth looks in like infrareds and try to find a suitable drilling point. Of course, this is in regards with the delicate, let me say, landmass that exists in Turkana County in regards to the shifting tectonic plates and the whole East African rift and volcanism, which I started with, that goes on there constantly. So by this, we discovered that Loima constituency actually, everything else was plus, plus, plus in terms of population, location, the river Takwell, everything was plus, plus, plus until we got here and we discovered that Loima actually delicately lies on a middle ground that's pretty delicate. On one side, we have a huge volcanic rock, and on the other side is where we have the aquifer. So you can see how this is quite delicate when it comes to drilling, and this is something maybe many humanitarian aiders have shied upon. I think even some UN bodies have really tried to extract this water, but they've been doing it wrong. So they don't get the right results, or they just completely disregard the whole project and move out. But this is because they do not know what's in the ground. They just know there's water, so they go drilling. The water is really deep. And I know one UN body that I won't shade or mention. They were doing extraction at a great point, but they just did a little bit of quote-unquote surface extraction. So they didn't drill as deep. So they didn't get to the water, and then now it became a whole issue that there's no water there. You have to do this strategically, and you have to be really planned when it comes to this area, because of how delicate and honestly immensely complicated it is in terms of the geographical issues that go on below the ground. I think it's why maybe also many explorations haven't been done there, because they don't have the best technology, and even so, drilling needs some certain specificity, a lot of science, a lot of geology, a lot of expertise, a lot of resources, and a lot of patience. Not so much, I think, if you do this going forward from a place that you've planned properly. Because I told you, Dr. Elaine, he did this in a record 3 days. So it's just, I think, planning that's kind of missing. Anyway, so we discovered Loima constituency. On one side is where the aquifer is. The other side is where the volcanic rock, which we need to avoid, is, because actually drilling there would be so hard and pricey, and we don't know about the saltiness of everything. So therefore, the coordinates I had initially suggested to him for drilling points. I'm telling you now, I'm even talking in coordinates. So the coordinates I had suggested to him in terms of where we could possibly drill, it lied on the volcanic rock side. So we had to shift it like 2 or 3 kilometer radius to get to where it's safe enough in terms of the aquifer to drill. So after this, we spoke more. This was more of a one-on-one conversation. And him being a busy person, after this, we spoke more on email and still brainstorming on the project and how we broke it down. Now, getting into the sunken, now everything just started getting more technical. And at least during this time when we were speaking on email, I had more moments to think deeply on the project in terms of how to go about it. And the more I thought, the more I discovered, in short, is what I'm trying to say. So I started looking at maps on my own, and I, trying to relate what we were talking about in the infrareds and the 3Ds and the satellite images we were looking at. So I was just also trying to look at more maps on my side and by my sides alone. And then I slowly realized that all these are actually maps and not what's on the ground in Loima. So we could have gotten a perfect drilling location in terms of the coordinates, but where is it? It could be out in the middle of nowhere, and there's no quote-unquote community that's going to benefit from it because it's out in the middle of nowhere. So I realized these are just coordinates, and these are just maps. I need to know what's on the ground, or is there a way we could find a community that could directly benefit from this, and then try center our project around them, as opposed to working from the other side of starting with the coordinates and finding nothing on the ground. So I therefore decided to look for a contact person on the ground to help with my understanding of the area and see what really is there, if possible, make my trips there beforehand of everything. So I also remembered, still in the thought process in terms of breaking down everything, I also remembered that we need to work with the local government and authorities there, because we will need permissions and stuff like that to carry out that sort of project. So I actually found out this recently when I was having a chat with someone, the head of solutions in UNDP, and he told me, he's actually the one who's been doing the project in Tana River. He told me there is, after our 2010 constitution, water became a devolved function. I don't know if this would sound familiar to everyone across the world, but now we have like regions that have local quote-unquote governments, and now they run a few things that the national government would previously run. So water now falls under the local governments. And this is something that I was also thinking about in terms of the authorities and the permissions and everything that we will need. I will need to get into contact with the local government, because I was doing kind of the opposite. I was getting in touch with the Ministry of Water and the Ministry of Arid and Semi-Arid Lands and the Ministry for Environment. So it's great, and they are aware about this project, but it's not quite context specific. Context specificity in this case would be the local government of Turkana County. We have 47 counties in Kenya. So water in this case would be for them, not the whole general ministry of the country. I feel by this you'll have learned so much geography and history of my country, but good knowledge. So I set out, of course, with all these discoveries and learning more about this project in terms of the sociological view. I set out to form strategic partnerships, explaining my dream to anyone and everyone. Actually, there's some lady I was speaking to. She is the founder. We were doing a program with her, and she told me about things that you're passionate about. Never shy away from speaking about them. So she was telling me, any chance you get to speak about this project, you should take it. And I was telling her when I was, I think where was I? Maybe episode 5, when I was just still thinking about what to do with this information. So she was encouraging me, if this is something that you want to pursue, then be sure to talk about it in forums and everywhere you are at, because you never know how people respond and the help you get. By the way, I think if you have a problem also generally, just keep talking about it, because for sure, one person, if not 10, will take interest in it or have interest in it. And they for sure will hope on and help you with it. It works. Talk about your issues. It helps. So I set out to form strategic partnerships, and I'm also grateful for sure for the National Geographic and the Nature Conservancy for being like the first people to believe in this dream, starting off from just, someone who was just conducting research for the purposes of art. But then them deciding to pick it up and support it with the initial, and let me say initial and substantial for sure, seed funding going into this project. So thank you again. I have also managed to get a few organizations on board, and this is something maybe I will attach as a document, because I don't want to preempt everything about it. And I think it's going live in this sense. I still have a lot to do, and I have built a team, of course, and I think you'll get to meet one of my co-leads, shortly in maybe the next few episodes. Equal dreamers as well. I think it's important to have people as crazy as you are on the same side, because you seemingly understand each other more. And that is the moving forward. And that's what I decided to do with all this information that I came across during my research. It's just not to sit in shelves, really. It's to be acted upon, which is something I have always emphasized. Don't just sit, act. So on the next episode, I will introduce to you the background story of the project, and maybe you can see now the context of why it really needs to be done, not only in the sense that the help is needed, but also its relation to my personal experiences previously. And I would like to leave you at that suspense, so that you come and listen to my story, the background story to the project and even its name. And we'll see how it goes. I'd like to thank you for listening to this climate journey story. As usual, this is more of a water cruise. And I hope it not only informs you, but also encourages you. I hope to see you on the next flight, as usual, for Earth.